Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If I have chocolate in my teeth, it's because I just ate a cookie.
Same here.
And yeah, I am really excited for this episode. It's been just over a week since we last posted. What was our last episode?
I think it was like 2 weeks. It was the tarot one.
Oh yeah, the tarot one. But this one is kind of, we kind of accidentally fallen into a theme with some of our podcasts, and that theme is kind of finding other races that were existing alongside humans. And if you haven't seen those episodes, we have one proving that giants were real and that giants walked upon the earth at one point in time. And
one about elves.
Elves, yes.
Yeah.
The Thuadae Danann. A race of mystical Nordic-looking beings who may be linked to alien heritage or pre-flood dynasty. And so today we are going to be diving into another branch of that. We won't be focusing on a single race of beings, but I will be bringing forth around 3.
Cool.
And I know that you have some cool photos and stuff that was inspired by this video you watched.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's jump into it. Basically, I had some awesome findings that point to a history of Earth that leans a little bit more on the side of fantasy than fact. And it kind of paints the picture that Earth at one point in time was more like a Tolkien novel, kind of like a Lord of the Rings realm.
Yeah, it does feel like that.
Because, we're so used to being the only bipedal, sentient sorts of beings, even though I would argue animals are sentient and intelligent. But I guess what we mean by that is more so beings who can make houses, who can build, who can create stone tools and stuff like that, Things that are very similar to humans, but slightly different. So, yeah, evidence in history shows that, we have a huge, complicated, gene and genetic tree that comes from, Homo erectus and a bunch of different other genus species, and how we all branched out. And for the most part, history kind of teaches us that that's it. But every now and then, people and archaeologists find evidence of beings that existed that we didn't know about before. So
we know about Neanderthals.
And the Denisovians and all these kinds of beings that are were closely linked to humans, and that some people today still share that genetic DNA.
Yeah.
But these are kind of very different, and there is evidence to back it all up. This is not just conspiracy schmoozy. This is evidence, archaeology, and scientific based. So it's very cool to kind of imagine that we lived alongside beings that were kind of very different to us, that could have rivaled or been more intelligent than us at the time. And it's strange to think, why did they go extinct and why did we survive? And, that's the millennial-old question. Why did these beings go extinct? But let's dive right into it. So, 60,000 years ago, diminutive beings dwelled on the Indonesian island of Flores, alongside Komodo dragons, pygmy stegodons, and real-life rodents of unusual size. The now extinct race, known scientifically as Homo florensis, and popularly as the Hobbits, stood less than 4 feet tall, kind of reaching a max of 1 meter at fully adult size. So these guys are really small. And they also had, their brains were 1/3 the size of people today. But They made stone tools, butchered meat, and somehow crossed miles of ocean to colonize their tropical home. So these weren't just like cave people banging rocks together. They knew how to think, they had a language, they knew how to make stone tools, how to make houses, shelters, and cross miles of ocean. So assumably they knew how to make boats and stuff like that. So they were quite advanced for the time, 60,000 years ago. And it's been 15 years since researchers first announced Homo florensis, and the discovery astonished anthropologists worldwide. So they're also called the orang pendek, which I think is the way the Indonesians call them, orang pendek. So I'm going to show you a couple photos here. The photos should already be on the screen for you guys. But yeah, one of the predators was this giant bird that was bigger than them. Wow. So it's crazy to imagine, these small 1 meter tall people fighting off these giant birds. So just,
interesting.
Really tiny. So they'd probably be up to my hip. Here's like a representation of like a human next to them. And these are all just kind of depictions of what they might look like. Here's a recreation of one of them in a museum. So very small people. So they were found in Liangbuao Cave on Flores, a narrow island about 200 miles long and 40 miles wide, between Southeast Asia and Australia. Initially, researchers reported that the remains dated between 12,000 and 95,000 years old. And for an extinct human species, 12,000 years ago is crazy recent. That's just at the end of the Younger Dryas period. We know that period very well because we binge-watched Randall and Graham Hancock. So the Younger Dryas, you should know that name very well.
Yeah.
But
the rapids and the... oh God.
What are you saying? The rapids? What rapids?
No, what was it that he always would comment on?
The Scablands.
The Scablands, that was it.
Come on.
Created by rapids, I think.
Created by torrential flooding.
Yeah.
Like you've never seen before. Come on. It's only a couple weeks ago that we watched that. But yeah, so 12,000 years ago, the Younger Dryas, that's really crazy because modern humans were building permanent settlements and monuments by then. So that's crazy that we would be living alongside them. But there's arguments that perhaps they actually don't date that early and kind of go between 60,000 to 100,000 years ago. It's still up for debate. And some of the oldest artifacts likely made by the Homo florensis or the Orang Pendang extend between 50,000 and 190,000 years ago, suggesting the species was there even further back, even if we haven't found their bones. So they found tools and stuff that were made by them. So yeah, they were thought to have reached Australia 65,000 years ago and migrated from Indonesia, or migrating, perhaps modern humans migrating down under met hobbits along the way. Yeah, so it was possible that our human ancestors interacted with these beings. And as we'll kind of go throughout history, is that there's actually quite a lot of evidence to suggest that there were a lot of different types of Homo classified beings.
Yeah.
And we were all interbreeding at moments, and that perhaps what we are today is a mix of all these different types of beings. So far, only bones from Liangbuao are indisputably attributed to the Homo florensis, but other sites have yielded material probably from the species or its direct ancestors. A 2016 Nature paper described hobbit-like fossils at Matamenje, also on Flores about 45 miles from Liangbuao. The finds included stone tools, a lower jaw fragment, and 6 tiny teeth dated approximately 700,000 years ago. substantially older than the Liangboa fossils, although the Matamenje remains are too scanty to definitively assign them to the species. Though most anthropologists consider them the hobbits, so there must be something with that lower jaw fragment and the tiny teeth that kind of link it to them. At a third site, researchers found no human fossils but uncovered 1 million-year-old stone tools, like those from Liangboa and Matamenje. Assuming these artifacts were made by Homo florensis or its ancestors, the Hobbit lineage inhabited floras at least from 50,000 to 1 million years ago. That's over 500,000 years longer than our species has even existed or said to exist.
Yeah. Cool. I wonder what happened to them.
I know. I wonder too. Maybe they got eaten by those big birds or Komodo dragons.
What happened to those big birds?
Yeah, well, they went extinct at the end of the Younger Dryas, I guess. Digging in Liangboa since 2001, an international team has uncovered bones from about a dozen hobbits. But the star specimen is called LB1. LB is the most complete individual, comprising a skull, partial pelvis, and bones from the limbs, hands, and feet. LB1 appears to be a female adult, and her wisdom teeth are fully formed, but measured just 3 foot 6 inches tall and weighed 75 pounds, as tall as a present-day 4-year-old, but heftier. So they've got the mature bones.
3 foot 7.
3 foot 6 inches.
Is a 6-year-old that tall?
3. So this is like about 1 foot. So yeah.
Like half of you. I would have thought that a 6-year-old would be, a lot less than half of you.
Well, I would. How old are they? 4-year-old. I would think a 4-year-old.
4-year-old. I think you said 6-year-old. Oh no, 4-year-old. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not got a good scope of kids' sizes.
Well, 1 foot, right? So 2 foot,
yeah.
3 foot. That's like...
It's not that small.
That's a bit shorter than my leg.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'5". So, and then 3 foot, I guess, a bit taller. So yeah, they're not that small, but they are definitely... Like, if you saw one of those people walking around, they're the size of a child.
Yeah.
But with all the proportions...
Like an adult.
Yeah, with like breasts and facial features of an adult and everything like that. So using micro CT scanning, high resolution 3D X-ray imaging, a 2013 study estimated her brain volume to be about 426 cc, 1.8 cups. I mean, we ate that many shiitake mushrooms last night.
How many cups is our brain?
Well, I guess 3 times bigger than that.
Okay.
So, similarly sized brains are characteristics of much earlier human ancestors, such as Australopithecus, who lived in Africa some 3 million years ago, and the global average for modern humans is 1,350 cc, which is 5.7 cups, over 3 times larger. Besides their wee bodies and brains, the Hobbit skeletons show a mix of primitive and modern-looking traits. Like Australopithecus and other hominins, okay, that's the word to use, so hominins, that's like similar to human.
Okay.
LB1 has ancient features including broad hips, a short collarbone, and forward-positioned shoulders. At the same time, the Hobbit's brow ridges, skull thickness, and brain shape are more modern, resembling Homo erectus and later species. The Liangboa team has also dug up more than 20,000 stone tools. Most are made from volcanic rock, deliberately fractured to have sharp edges for slicing and dicing. This simple technology resembles the earliest widespread style of tool making, the old one made by numerous ancestor species starting in Africa 2.6 million years ago. So there's a little confusion in the details, and when scientists began to take a closer look at the Homo florensis, they found more than a few unique characteristics. The Homo florensis has an odd mixture of primitive features, such as a small body and brain, like the late Pleistocene Homo, but with unique skeletal characteristics. The upper versus lower limb proportions are like the Australopithecus. God, it's a hard word. And the cranial shape is more like the Homo erectus. With such a mixture, it's hard to detect what this creature could have been. The answers: the best way to decipher this newfound species is to take a look at its teeth. The University of Tokyo, Yusuke Kaifu, led a team to conduct comparisons with multiple sets of teeth. Both crown size and contour were examined of the 490 Homo sapiens, early Homo erectus, from the Indonesian island of Java about 1 million years ago, and the Homo florensis. Homo habilis from around 2 million years ago, and among these specimens, the Homo florensis had the most startling results. The canines were found to be primitive, while the molars were advanced. The primitive dental aspects can be compared to Homo erectus from the early Pleistocene era, while the advanced molars seem even more progressive than modern humans. Don't know what that means, but this combination isn't found in any other species of hominin, including our own direct ancestors. So it could be that these orang pendang or Homo florensis were on an evolutionary tree to be as advanced as we are today, considering that they had certain progressions that were more advanced than us, but then at the same time some that were a bit more stunted. And it's still a mystery why they went extinct.
Yeah, probably because like humans probably killed them off.
You and your human massacre theory.
They did it to the giants.
In the giant.
They tried to do it with the elves, and now they're doing it with the hobbits.
It's not
like, come on, like, I think if we did have like cool mythical creatures, if you look at like how many just in our lifetime, how many animals have gone extinct because of humans.
Or
hundreds of thousands, probably millions.
Well, we don't really know our true history because we're under the belief that there was a civilization that existed pre-Ice Age because of all we've learned from Graham Hancock.
Yeah, we're believers.
So if these guys were existing before the Ice Age and there was human civilization as well before the Ice Age, it's perhaps that when the Great Flood came, these beings hadn't quite reached a state of advancement. Who knows if they even lived till then, because the history is debated whether or not they actually made it to the end of the Younger Dryas period, or if they actually went extinct.
Do they know why the other humanoid types died off, like Neanderthals, etc.?
They probably do.
Probably because humans killed them off.
We are those things. We evolved from those things. So the humans weren't there. There
was two humans did exist alongside Neanderthals for a bit.
Oh, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure. I'd say I'm like 90% sure.
Well, I don't have those facts, and I'm not a wide range historian.
But I think that if you mentioned earlier that these hobbits, they was traveling across seas, and they possibly went to Australia. They could have been there for a while. I don't know whether they would have been met like with kindness when they arrived or not, but it's a massive country, so who's to say if people were even aware of them to begin with.
They might have just been too small.
Yeah, they
for
could
this
have
world,
snuck around.
Especially in the Ice Age, there were some big cats, there were some big mammoths, and there were some big birds.
Yeah.
And not just from Sesame Street. Yeah,
but look at the giants.
Yeah, they were big. Maybe they were too big for them.
They were big and they didn't survive. Look at the dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's true.
The mammoths.
It's true. Who knows? We might even... They might not have gone extinct. They might have evolved. Because, I know there's pygmy races and races of humans out there who are much genetically shorter than the average human. So perhaps that, this genetic DNA lived on. So who knows? And we don't know why they became so small.
Well, they might not have become so small. Maybe they always was small.
Yeah.
He probably didn't. It's like we do have small humans. I like saw a video come up. I didn't watch it the other day, but it was like about some like 2-foot woman.
Yeah, but those are like rare. Whereas you don't have a whole society of 2-feet women.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously they had a lot of other things in their genetics that was different to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I do think that they could possibly be, if you're saying about like the advanced molars and things like that. Maybe we did have some of them in our genes as well.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe certain types of people in certain areas of the world, because just people are so varied and different. You know, if you look at like Europeans and how different they can look to people on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And people who look like Europeans, they look like it because their ancestors travelled to that country from Europe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's like, most scientists believe that, we were all kind of common ancestors from the Neanderthals and stuff. But then now we're seeing that there's Denisovian genetics in some of the native beings on our Earth. So you can see that it's a much more complex process. And if we've been interbreeding with other races, perhaps, then we could just be, a strange mix of all of these different types. But the difference is that it's like the races is different than a different class or species. It would be like saying a gorilla, like a gorilla with a different hair color compared to a gorilla and a chimpanzee. They're completely different species of monkey.
So that's what you're saying. It's like, but a gorilla and a chimpanzee cannot mate.
No.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And like, what about a donkey and a horse? A donkey and a horse can mate and make a mule.
Can a gorilla and a chimpanzee mate?
But then what's wrong with the mule? All mules are infertile. The line stops there.
Same with a horse.
Do you know what? Since we watched that episode of Heartland, I didn't even really ever think about a horse. I think I maybe had heard of it, but I imagine that's the same as the donkey and the horse thing. They'd create the horse and then you wouldn't be able to breed from it because that kind of makes sense.
So there might be one common link ancestor that maybe, the Denisovians, Neanderthals, like we split up eventually. We started evolving in different ways.
There's Neanderthal DNA in every human.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's in a very small, I think in Africa, certain part of Africa, there's some Neanderthal DNA, but it's like not like common at all.
So what's our common link? Homo
sapien, is it? Or?
Well, we're Homo sapiens now.
It's Homo
erectus.
Erectus, I think. Yeah.
It's really strange how words change now, and that Homo erectus would have.
It's the one, because they was around at the same time.
Yeah, well, we don't know, but let's just stick to the reports.
What we know,
the reports that we're getting, because we're just throwing things in the air now. But it's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, we're learning with you guys here. We're not like claiming to know everything, and it's just it's interesting to think about. Definitely something probably worth looking into, but it's just a different species. Like I think it's more. I feel like it's more like the donkey and the horse, or the chimp and the gorilla, like similar to us, but actually like a totally different animal thing.
It's very cool that they're building stone tools and we're advanced to a certain level, because you don't really hear about any other than us, than our old ancestors doing that. So it's cool to have like, oh, these guys were doing that too, even though they were different from us.
Do you think that, like, what to you is like signs of like intelligence or a civilization? Is it just having tools and building shelter? Because
No,
if
because
you
I
think
think
that's
dolphins.
what birds do already.
Yeah, I think dolphins, birds, I think they're all. I think it's, but there's different ways of measuring intelligence.
Yeah.
I just think it's cool that we share a similar link. It does take a certain level, because monkeys could be way better off if they could build tools, and we're seeing now that monkeys are designing tools and using them for fishing and stuff, which makes it easier for them to eat, and so that there is a development that can happen, and I think that's when we're classifying it just our branch of species, it is quite advanced for us, in our range. But then when I look at birds and whales and dolphins, they have an entirely different intelligence with their own societies and stuff like that. That's very different. And that building tools doesn't necessarily mean that you're advanced. It just shows that you've evolved to develop a certain way of thinking and a way to use your external environment to help you. And dolphins evolved in a way to use sonar to trap the fish and stuff like that, and we don't have. It would be way cooler if we could use some sonar device to get coconuts down from a tree or something like that, but we have to. But we figured out, we can just use a long stick and poke it down, or
Right, on a podcast I was listening to today, speaking of which podcast, they were talking about animals, and they mentioned dolphins and how they are being classed as a human type, the first ever human type species or something. Basically their intelligences and their social dynamic, it's up there with ours. They're the only other animal apparently to have sex for pleasure.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've heard sex in the animal kingdom is not the most pleasant thing for a lot of...
Yeah, especially chickens.
Have you seen turtle sex?
Let's not go there.
Alright, a snake. Oof. Poor women. And men in the spider relationship.
Yeah, men are F in the insect world.
Anyway, so let's move on to the second one. And I think you're really going to like this, man.
Okay.
This thing.
I like the Hobbits.
Yes, the Hobbits are cool.
The name of this episode should be Hobbits Are Real.
Well, yeah, but it's not just Hobbits.
Yeah, I know, but that's I'm sure the audience will agree with me. That's clickbait.
All right, audience, you tell us. So now the second one is something that I'm not showing you photos purposefully.
You're not going to show me
I'm going to
photos?
show you photos, but right now I'm hiding it. Now, the second one is something that we may all be familiar with in one way or another through pop culture or popular conspiracy theories. I'm going to tell you the name. Maybe you can guess. It is known as the Gigantopithecus. Can anyone guess? Popular conspiracies, pop culture. What is everyone trying to prove is real?
Is it the hairy guy? The Yodi or what's it?
Gigantopithecus
Bigfoot?
or Sasquatch. Bigfoot.
That's it. Yes.
Yes, with over 10,000 alleged sightings in the past 50 years, Bigfoot or Sasquatch has become one of those legendary creatures that many still believe exist. This giant ape-like creature has been a mysterious presence in the collective imaginary of North America and the world, all over the world. Siberia, other places.
All over the world. Siberia. Yeah, and other places. Amazing.
The world since the 19th century, but even after all this time, no one has been able to prove its existence or non-existence until recently. What is true is that the idea of a giant ape that lurks in the forest has been around since the dawn of humanity. Call it Bigfoot on the American continent or Yeti in Asia.
Yeti, that's what I was thinking of.
The fear and fascination towards a majestic yet fearsome giant ape has been part of our imagination for millennia, and there might be an explanation for that.
Intense.
Here are some reproductions of the bones based on the bones that they found linking Gigantopithecus.
So they've actually found their bones.
They've actually found the bones and they've classified it and named it Gigantopithecus, a huge giant ape, bipedal walking, hairy motherfucker, big boy.
Wow, it's amazing. I've watched a lot of conspiracy podcasts and videos on Bigfoot, and I've never heard of them actually finding bones.
Yeah, so they have lower jaw. Here you can see in this photo. Here's a size reference, and yeah, so there were. So basically, these are what people are terming the original Bigfoot. And once upon a time, over 1 million years ago, gigantic apes prowled the earth. And it's estimated that these creatures, known as Gigantopithecus blacki, stood over 10 feet tall and weighed around 1,200 pounds.
Wow. Terrifying.
Yeah.
Unless it was friendly like that one from the movie.
And the thing is, I think, they've kind of linked the DNA somewhat to orangutans, like a mixture of orangutan and something else.
A gorilla.
I don't know, yeah. And it, it could even have inspired the King Kong franchise, this giant ape.
Yeah. Though King Kong doesn't remind me of Bigfoot.
No, he's a big gorilla.
Yeah.
But, what?
He's a big ass gorilla.
King Kong had a soft side, didn't he?
I never watched anything about King Kong. It never interested me. But I've seen the movie photos and stuff.
Yeah. So, I can imagine, because orangutans can be really, really gentle and sweet and...
yeah, and also rip your face off.
And rip your face off. Yeah, that's true. That's happened. But so, this guy could be the same.
Yeah.
Just like King Kong, he can bring down cities, but then once he falls in love,
oh right,
that tames him.
Did he
tames
fall in
his
love
temper.
with a human?
Yeah, this woman can tame his temper, and looks him in the eyes, and he calms down.
Wow.
So the Gigantopithecus made its first appearance in the scientific world around 1935 when a German paleoanthropologist by the name of Ralph von Kogenswald encountered an unusual big primate molar being sold at random store in Hong Kong. Seeing the dental price, he discovered it was real, but the large size of the molar wasn't even near to any of the primates registered in history. Kogenswald wanted to find out everything about this massive creature, and soon colleagues followed, gathering an important collection of hundreds of Gigantopithecus teeth and jaws from Asian countries like China, Vietnam, and even India. Throughout the decades, scientists have tried to find other types of fossils other than jaws and teeth, but the quest has been unattainable. Still, thanks to technology in comparison with other species of apes, scientists have been able to give this majestic creature a face and look, placing the existence of the Gigantopithecus between the Civipithecus and prehistoric primate that also lived on the Asian continent 12 to 8 million years ago, and modern orangutans. So, the many studies and research made on Gigantopithecus teeth have revealed that this enormous creature was herbivorous. It fed mainly on fruits, seeds, grass, and bamboo, and they would mostly live on the ground collecting food. However, despite its size, which would give it an advantage over other predators, this mostly Pacific creature didn't manage to survive, and it's estimated it went extinct about 300,000 years ago.
Or did it?
Or did it?
Yeah. Or did it just go hiding in the mountains and the forests?
Yeah, exactly. Or did it manage to evolve to become what we know today as the Yeti? But if humans were around that long ago, we might have been interacting with it.
Yeah, because we do have that gene that where people have hair or over every inch of them.
Yeah.
Furry, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that could be...
But monkeys are also furry.
Yeah, but these are quite human, like you're saying. They're standing upright.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it could be passed on genes, genetics.
Could be.
Who knows?
One of the theories that could explain its sudden extinction is the fact that the Tibetan Plateau rose from 1.6 to 800 million years ago. This event caused a major alteration in the climate of the continent, bringing long periods of coldness followed by dry periods, and killed acres of forests, the Gigantopithecus' environment.
Oh, that's so sad. It's like the Amazon, you know, what's going on. But humans are doing that. But I mean, it's so sad. Like the animals' environment just being stripped from them.
Yeah. Other factors that might have weighed in its extinction are evolution and the survival of the fittest, but I don't really believe in the survival of the fittest. It's possible that other... freaking Darwinian logic. It's possible that other more fitted primates ended up taking the Gigantopithecus' source of food, pushing the species into oblivion. What we kind of do know with like bigger species is that they have a longer gestation period in the belly, you know, like for producing offspring.
Yeah, like elephants like 2 years to
yeah
birth.
Yeah, and then they only produce one, and then it takes a long time to produce another. So if, you know, maybe some freaking ancient chimps or something were like, let's get this guy, he's taking all our fruits. And you know, because he's...
I loved your chimp voice. Let's get this guy, he's taking all our fruits, dude.
Because he's like 1,200 pounds, so you need to eat a lot of...
See how many bananas he's eating, dude?
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like, hey, man, screw that Gigantopithecus, let's get him. Let's get this guy. So here, last but not least, studies have revealed that the Gigantopithecus had a very slow process of development and maturity, which could sign a low reproductive rate of the species, which is what we just said. So the fact that such a big primate creature existed has been taken by many believers as proof that Bigfoot and its legendary relatives are real, arguing that the Gigantopithecus didn't really go extinct, but that very few specimens managed to survive by hiding and leading a solitary existence throughout hundreds of thousands of years. Not out of the question. We're still discovering underwater creatures that we've never seen before. You know, there was this volcano that we found, and there was a whole biome living within it with species and creatures that we never knew existed. The world is big. It's possible. Adding to this approach is the theory by scientists that claims that the Gigantopithecus had an interesting group dynamic. Some believe that these creatures would bury their dead, which could explain why it's so hard to find fossils other than teeth and jaws. And that's not so hard to believe. Crows bury their dead. I mean, have funerals for their dead.
Do they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And... you know, so these social structures don't just exist within humans.
Crows are super smart. Did you know, like, some crows can speak English?
Speak English?
Yeah.
Like sentences and...
yeah. They're like, if they're hanging around, like, wherever, it's not English, it's whatever country they live in.
So they can speak some words. But I don't think they can string sentences together.
No, they can't string sentences, but they can mimic words.
Yeah.
And they can understand that, when they say this word, it means this. They act like that.
Yeah. Like, I want a cracker. And then they...
not like just like a parrot, because they're in the wild. They can do it to distract people. Or they can understand, like, that when a human says this word, it gets this they act like this, or it makes others react like this. So they like use it strategically.
You're a loser. Aw. Who said that? Screw you. Kill yourself.
No.
Damn it. And you God hated me. Poor guy.
I'm not saying crows are like evil.
Well, one time I was trying to climb this tree. These crows were fucking pissed. There must have been like this nest, they started squawking like hell. Crows started coming from other trees to my tree. I was like, oh shit. I got down and I was like looking up, and the crows were all like looking at me. So they were starting to fly around me.
Oh my god.
And I started walking away, and they flew with me. And I think they were trying to make sure I didn't come back. And then once I got a certain range away, they went and flew back to the tree. And I was like, oh god.
Yeah, F with the...
I didn't mean to. I was trying to climb a tree, yo. Shit. Anyway, okay. So yeah, that's Gigantopithecus.
Yeah, so like I've heard psychics in the past saying that Bigfoots are like interdimensional beings. So you showed scientific tech tray over here, won't have it.
Hey, they could be.
Yeah, they could be. And just throwing it out there. Anyway, we got to move on because our time snap's quick.
So, okay. The last one I have for you is the one I saved for last because it's the most interesting to me. And they don't have a name. Many modern archaeologists still refute the fact that this is even natural. And this belongs to humans or beings with elongated skulls.
Yeah. We've all heard of the elongated skulls.
We've all heard of the elongated skulls. It's been made popular through different movies.
Did you not mention them then?
Huh?
You don't mention them.
What?
The elongated skulls. You don't...
That's what I'm going to do now.
Oh, I thought you was doing the one you drew.
Oh, no, that's the other episode.
Okay. Sorry.
We have another episode because I found something else that I was going to put in this podcast, and then
it's a whole episode.
I did some research, and it was like, holy crap, I'm going down the rabbit hole into some really crazy history behind the finding of that skull.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's next episode, guys.
Yeah. So these are the beings with the elongated skulls. And for many years, based on some of the more modern human traditions, because there are modern human traditions where people
like with the ear stretching.
Do some sort of cranial deformation, where they unnaturally elongate the skull when you're young and it's still pliable, and they do certain body modifications to make the skull longer. But my theory, and what we're going to dive into on a lot of new evidence that's come out, is that actually the cultures that might be doing it now are actually trying to imitate a type of being that did exist. And the science is irrefutable now that there were beings with elongated skulls. It's not just people who did the modification. And there's all types of body modification. There's people in Thailand who do these rings around their neck to make their necks longer.
Yeah, I've seen
and
that.
And they go so long.
And then like the ear stretching.
That big lip
stretching.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things, but the elongated skull is so fascinating because you find that everywhere. You find the first things were found in China, they're found in Africa through ancient Egypt, and there's a whole treasure trove of them.
And isn't there like rumors that's why like the Pope has such a long hat? It's because like originally it was to hide the elongated skull.
It's possible because when you look at the ancient Egyptian stuff and the Peruvians,
they had those long.
The Peruvians is where we get most of the skulls, but they have those headpieces, and they have elongated skulls, and the historians are saying that these people with the elongated skulls were an elite group within whatever society they were in. When you look at the hieroglyphs and everything, the only people with the elongated skulls are people in power, like the pharaoh or the pharaoh's family, stuff like that. So let's dive into this one. So there was this cool research, and this was done, an interview with Mark Laplume, and it is the story of elongated skulls and the denied history of ancient people. So Mark Laplume is an independent researcher who is, and he's also an artist. So he's been researching these skulls and also making reconstruction drawings. So it's really cool, his reconstruction drawings. And He's been now sharing all of his insights into the mystery of the elongated skulls. And yeah, it's very cool stuff. So he first started kind of researching it when he discovered these vast ruins on Google Earth, and he was getting kind of interested, and it covered basically every hilltop in all directions, and he knew something had gone on there, but he wasn't sure. And it was only like 6 years later, when he saw one of Brian Forster's posts showing elongated skulls, that he began to grow fascinated with them. And he reached out to him and kind of started, that's when it all started. And when you look at the images of the skulls, this is a quote from him. So, looking at the images of the skulls made me curious as to who these people were and how they looked. There were almost no interpretations of their appearance and almost nothing about their history. My momentary sense of inclusion made me wonder what I could do to help him to advance our understanding of these people. Although I had not picked up a pencil in 14 years, I felt sure I could draw them to recreate their faces to see what they looked like. So here are some images of these elongated skulls. And he began to start doing some archival research of the elongated skulls. And he has done 5,000 drawings and collected more than 18,000 photos of skulls, mummies, and related artifacts. It's a lot of bones, and a lot of evidence. And when he was working with the data and making drawings, he got very frustrated with the lack of understanding history and myth of what these people were. And he had so many unanswered questions, so he was like, okay, why are so few... He was wondering why so few people could involve themselves with this kind of project. It was like a really huge wall or mountain to overcome, and no one was really giving it the light of day. They were just saying, it's just like the body modifications.
Weirdly enough, like, science at times can be so close-minded when, like, the whole point of it is to be open-minded.
Yeah.
That's how you make new discoveries and learn more. But I'm learning, like, the more that we dive into this stuff, you just realize how close-minded scientists are, and especially now with what we know of quantum physics and how the conscious mind can affect the study. So it's a shame, because even with the giant stuff and there's tons, like thousands of these elongated skulls, and they're just pushed aside.
And so here is some very cool renditions based on what they kind of might have looked like based on the skull. And some of them had these interesting bone structures. It was like they had unique bone structures, kind of like how a cat has a unique pattern on their forehead,
or a horse.
Exactly. So they had different formations, but they all shared the common trait of the elongated skull. And so Mark says that when I began this study in 2011, the count of skulls was known by very, very few people who were actually aware of this. They estimated that there were a few hundreds of skulls, but through web searches, I've found literally thousands of them. There are also about 1,000 skulls in Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Chile, which are not yet accessible to the public. Even more skull remains are unknown, as they have not been photographed, or at least are not publicly accessible, and therefore not available for public viewing in Chile and Peru. But he's got hundreds of images and is recreating these in a really cool way, so we can kind of see and imagine what these people look like. And these are some skulls in a museum in Romania. So One of the interviewer said, academic researchers are generally dismissive of elongated skulls. They see them as nothing but artificially deformed human skulls, a result of deliberate head binding to achieve a flattened shape. In addition to this artificial head modification thesis, they sometimes also cite a medical problem called hydrocephaly. Why do you think academics maintain this view? What is their evidence? So elongated skulls are never spoken about without terms of head binding. It's the hole in the bucket refrain from which there is no escape. But now there are also those, and I mean not only researchers, but obviously people who've woken up to the layers of lies we've been fed since the get-go. Many who look at the evidence of anomalies in the skulls are not satisfied with believing in the cranial modification dogma. People like Brian Forrester, Lloyd Pye, Graham Hancock, not to forget Michael Cremo, examine and record evidence rather than the stories made by earlier researchers, textbook, and other gatekeepers of conventional perspectives. The point, he says, is to keep asking questions. So the reality is that 99% of those who speak about it have never examined an elongated skull firsthand. And he doesn't know how it's so prevalent except that it's repeated all the time. The usual approach to the elongated skulls is dominated by concepts, but the skull's shapes are not linguistic, they are morphologic. And his work has been an attempt to make a soft rebuttal by looking and drawing these pictures. And what really changed and shifted the paradigm of these head-bound skulls was finding fetal...
I knew you was going to say that, yeah.
Fetal remains, babies who were not yet born, who had the shape of those elongated skulls. And so let me just look through these photos here. So there's a lot of differences. It is claimed that all skulls are merely artificial modern skulls of the modern-looking human, but the fact is many had larger eyes as well as a 25% larger brain case than modern humans. Also, they had higher ears, up to half an inch higher than normal. Cranial sutures are different. So that's like, when we're born as a baby, our skull is actually not fused together.
Yeah.
And then when they fuse together, they form those they join, the plates of the head join together. Mm. So those are the cranial sutures, where our skull makes these patches and they join together. So the cranial sutures are different. They don't mimic humans, and there are mysterious holes at the back of the skull. An extra plate above the occipital plate known as the Inca bone. So, the Parca's skulls have variations in the occipital bone compared to modern-day human skulls. And you can see there's these little holes in the back of the head. And there's a problem with the infants too, which have been found in Peru and the Andes with a tooth set of a 3-year-old modern human child. Most parents will know that the molar teeth in an infant-sized toddler is unheard of. So infant skull from Cusco, Peru, and infant child skull from Tiwanaku, Bolivia have these molars in them.
It's
so it's
nuts.
So it's not just the skull that's different, but the teeth formations are different as well. And you can see the very different...
The kind of alien vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like when you even think of the classic great alien, it has like a big round, like it's not like round, it kind of goes up, like it's got the face and then it goes up and out, like similar to these skulls. And then they're saying they have bigger eyes. Yeah. But still a small face, but this massive head. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So, this next article really goes into elongated skulls in utero, which is, kind of, it throws away the artificial cranial deformation theory. And so, the elongated skulls are usually explained in terms of head binding, but and this paradigm emerged in the first half of the 19th century. And the main idea behind the head binding paradigm is that all elongated skulls are a result of an intentional modification of the form of the skull by applying external pressure. But what evidence could challenge this paradigm? And it's the existence of fetuses with elongated skulls, evidence that such skulls already have an elongated shape in utero before any head binding was possible. And do we have any such evidence? Yes. And this evidence has been known to the academic community for over 163 years.
What the hell?
So for 163 years, they've been trying to hold on to this old idea.
Typical. Typical, eh?
Rivero and Schutte in Peruvian Antiquities argue that the protagonists of the artificial cranial deformation hypothesis are mistaken, since they had only considered the skulls of adults. In other words, the hypothesis fails to take into account the skulls of infants and, most importantly, fetuses, which had similar elongated skull shape. It is worth quoting Rivero and Schutte, and they say, "We ourselves have observed the same fact of the absence of signs of artificial pressure in many mummies of children of tender age who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance of pressure of the cranium. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn, and of this truth we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave of Huiche, 2 leagues from Tarma, and which is at this moment in our collection." So they have this proof.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was found, the fetus was 7 months of age, and it belongs to, according to a very clearly defined formation of the cranium, to the tribe of the Huancas. And we present the reader with a drawing of this conclusive and interesting proof. So very interesting that the skulls that are found were developing in the uterus, and they're already really large.
Yeah, jeez.
So the 2 elongated infant skulls, which Rivero and Schutte mention in Peruvian Antiquities, were discovered and brought to England by Captain Blankley and presented to the Museum of the Devon and Cornwall Natural History Society in 1838. Dr. Bellamy provided a detailed description of these skulls in 1842, suggesting that they belonged to 2 infants, male and female, few months and about a year old respectively. He indicated substantial structure difference from those of normal infant skulls and the absence of the signs of artificial pressure, as well as their similarity to other Titicaca skulls of the Museum of the College of Surgeons in London. So there's, it's not just like today in modern day we can track the evidence of cranial deformation.
Yeah.
We can say, oh, this is when the deformation started, and there's evidence to show that there's been pressure and everything to control that. And the fact that their skulls and sutures are very different, that they've got these extra bits within the skull, just shows that there is something more there, and that the children within the womb are also having this. So there's a lot of evidence kind of showing that these skulls are not all, especially the more ancient ones, those are genetic. So, some cool. So, recently, they began to analyze the DNA of these skulls, which hadn't been done in a long time. And the DNA results were actually incredibly complicated.
Wow.
What it does show for sure is that the Paracas elongated skull people were not 100% Native American meaning like of the American continent. So in Peru, Native American, not like North Native American.
Yeah.
They were a mix, or even you could say in some ways a hybrid of different people. Their blood types are very complicated as well. They should be blood type O if they're 100% Native American, and that's not the case. We are likely looking at a subspecies of a humanity as regards to the Paracas. There seems to be a lot of DNA evidence from extreme Eastern Europe and extreme Western Asia. More specifically, I'm talking about the area in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, where ancient elongated skull people lived, I think, about 3,000 years ago. So I think we are looking at a migration pattern starting in the Caspian Black Sea area and then entering through the Persian Gulf and then moving eastwards, eventually winding up on the coast of Peru. And 10 of the Parca's elongated skull's blood were tested, and they should be 100% type O, but it's turning out high percentages of type A, a small percentage of type B, very high percentages of type AB, and less than half is O. So the Parcas were an incredibly complex ethnic mix of people. They were not just one race, but it was a subspecies of human. Like, so it would be, there would be black elongated skull people, you know, South American elongated skull people,
Exactly.
East, you know, European elongated skull people. Yeah, so there are a different number of haplogroups that were found in the DNA tests of the Paracas elongated skulls. And these haplogroups, which is your genetic ancestry, they don't fit in with the history of Peru in any shape or form. It appears that the largest elongated skulls on the planets have been found, A, in Paracas, Peru, and B, in the Caucasus area in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. So this person's theory is that there was a subspecies of human, which is eventually going to be called Homo sapien Paracas, and they were living in the area in between the Caspian and Black Sea. They were invaded by someone, and so they were forced to flee. By studying the wind and currents of the ocean, I've been able to come up with the following concept. They moved southwards until they found the Persian Gulf, and probably taken by the prevailing currents and winds, which would have taken them eastward into the Pacific Ocean. Over the course of a period of time, maybe tens of years or hundreds of years, they began to breed with people in the Pacific, and that's why we're getting such a complicated reading of the blood types. They made it to Tahiti. From Tahiti, they were able to sail south to New Zealand, and then once they hit New Zealand, they were able to catch the Humboldt current that took them up to the coast of South America. And yeah, so there's his theory of how they managed to interbreed and do all of that. And these skulls were not only found in Peru and the Black Sea, they were found in China, Eurasian continents, and Africa, and many are dated to roughly as far back as 12,000 years ago, which is the end of the Younger Dryas period, at the very end of the last ice age. So in a lot of myths from different cultures, there was a group of gods that survived the catastrophic flood, arriving at various parts in the world to kickstart civilization. In China, there was a people called the Dragon People, and they were tasked with bringing civilization to that part of the world. And in the Chinese mythology, they were described as being long-headed.
Interesting.
In ancient Egypt, Tibet, Mesoamerica, and Peru, in ancient times, the beings with elongated heads were said to have some sort of mystical or enhanced powers that humans did not. They could heal very quickly and heal things that normal people couldn't. They could understand time and were said to be able to see into the future and into the past. And they could access information that the average people could not do easily. And since we have this, shared cultural myth that there was the Great Flood and then people came to rebuild, that these people, these elongated skull people, could have been the people of the past, the ancient advanced society of the past, considering we see them in the elite groups of many different things within Peru, within ancient Egypt with the pharaoh heads and all of that. Even in Malta, there was a subterranean temple, and within the lower chambers, archaeologists found thousands of skeletal remains with elongated skulls. there were 33 chambers beneath the earth and found 11,000 bodies there. They weren't buried in any way, so they suggested that some sort of cataclysm must have happened that killed them all.
Gotta go to Malta so much.
I know. A lot of them, over 1,000 were elongated, and something was different about the group. They represented an elite group, and they had a different genetic background. And so out of the 11,000 bodies, only 1,000 were elongated. So that means that humans were interacting with these elongated skulled people. And there are many written myths that these people came from the stars as well. So that points to a potential alien theory, but who knows? It could just be that they were an advanced race of beings living on the earth. And so here are some of the depictions and stone carvings from ancient Egypt. That sent me flying upwards. So
yeah, don't try and zoom in.
Yeah, I won't try and zoom in. So yeah, these huge head cases, these head pieces that were given to the pharaohs and people of importance. The pharaoh Akhenaten, they actually discovered his skull and it was elongated.
Oh wow!
So Queen Nefertiti was also said to have an elongated skull. This is ancient Paracos with elongated skulls, and they look like that. And this is what they imagined if maybe they had hair.
Yeah.
This is from the Peruvian and the Mayan, big eyes, big head, and
big ears.
In the the big ears. In the hieroglyphs, they were always depicted differently than the normal Egyptians. There was these long-headed skull people, and they were normally bigger and in charge, and
they had the bigger brains, so they'd be smarter. Could they be a type of alien that did come here after the Ice Age to, mix and breed here to bring their knowledge and intelligence and genes?
And it could be, a lot of people, like Atlantis, Shambhala, like there's all these different cities that existed pre-flood and then something happened. So who knows if there was like aliens came ages ago, bred with some sort of human, made something, or if these were just a native human that existed before the flood, and they were, they said they were tasked with kickstarting civilization again. So, even in the Emerald Tablets, they say they came from Atlantis, landed on Egypt, and the humans at the time were nothing more than cavemen with tools and things like that. So they mixed with them. And when you see like the evolutionary period, humans were kind of going like this, and then all of a sudden, boom!
Yeah.
Huge spike in knowledge and...
But also, like, something happened with humans, I guess, like, in the future we could talk about it. Like, even just, like, in the 50s, so, like, suddenly, just things started going from that point so fast, technology-wise.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. It's like, how did we go from, like, having pretty much nothing sitting around a fire to, like...
Well, the electricity.
Yeah. But I mean, it's all the inventions that come out and just the speed of everything. I don't know. It's just, how did we go so long, Yeah. It's crazy to me.
So Akhenaten's daughter, he was a pharaoh, said to have born with an elongated head. And in the mythology, the pharaohs were the sons of Horus. And Horus was a god, or a neter in their terminology. So could be that the pharaohs for a long time were the actual descendants of this old lineage of people. And Tutankhamun, he had not quite as long, but it was bigger. So you can see that perhaps through interbreeding that the genetics began to return. He had a bigger skull, but it was nowhere near as big as like Akhenaten's daughter and some of the other elongated skulls that we've seen. Yeah, and here's just a lot of depictions of based on different skulls that we've found. And this is, oh God, I've zoomed in. It's one of the mummies, one mummy in ancient Egypt. I had to include a picture of an alien here.
Yeah. They're very similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
And who knows, this could be us in the future. It could be a future, like I love the alien theory that the aliens that came to help us with civilization were actually from the future and came into the past to live and teach.
It could be that. It could even be like some type of cyborg that we created.
Yeah. Well, the Greys. I said these different, because these beings weren't small like the Greys.
Yeah.
They were average height of some. Yeah. So, okay. I know we're kind of pushing our time. I just wanted to quickly go over some final notable mentions that I'm not going to go into much detail because they don't have a lot of research into them, but there is one thing called the weird Andover. Oh, before we go into that, do you want to talk about the elongated skull people anymore?
No, I think we said a lot. It's very interesting.
Cool. So big takeaway from them is that we have now proof that fetuses were being born like this.
Yeah,
the
that's
cranial
so interesting.
Structure and formation is very different to ours. Not very different, but different in many ways to ours. So yeah, it's very cool to know that probably these cultures got it from somewhere. They're elongating their skulls to maybe mimic these advanced beings. So yeah, here's this. There was this weird skull called the Andover vampire skull, and it was unearthed in Venice, Italy in 2009 by a team of archaeologists who were excavating a mass burial pit. And this is what the skull looked like. Big teeth, very elongated canines, and an elongated skull. Overall, the skull was larger than average humans and had a distinctive domed forehead. Mr. Morris glued the skull fragments together and apparently kept it in his study where he would show it to curious friends and visitors. After some months, Mrs. Morris became distressed by its presence and insisted that it be reburied, as he convinced herself that it was demonic, or at least the skull of a powerful Indian medicine man. The next one is called the Star Child skull, and it is quite controversial because of its widespread publicity. In brief, the original skull, which is estimated to be 900 years old, was discovered by an American teenage girl near the Copper Canyon district of Sierra Tarahumara in the southwest of the Chihuahua state in Mexico. And this is its shape. And it got really popular, so even books were written about it, trying to say it's like a genetic enigma. Is it a human alien hybrid?
Yeah.
Its skull formation is very, very different. And yeah, so two distinct schools of thought regarding the specimen have emerged. One group see it as evidence of various theories ranging from alien-human hybrids to proof of an alternative evolution. The other group believe that the skull is nothing more than a natural deformity, possibly caused by some sort of brachycephaly Cruzon syndrome or some other genetic mutation. We've talked about the Peruvian Caluga skull and the elongated skulls. There is a horned skull of China.
What the hell? Is
with
that
a
real?
horn growing from it. Yep.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, so let's see.
It's got like a horn on its forehead like a rhino.
Yeah.
For people who are listening.
It was a horned skull on display in the London Museum. Oh, well, they said we went there and looked for it, but couldn't find it.
I don't know. Like,
might not be real.
That real?
It became a... Yeah. It became popular, but perhaps it was like an imitation, like someone screwing with everyone.
Yeah.
The giant skulls of Saudi Arabia. We talked about giants, so you have to go watch our giant video.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
the skull in comparison to a human skull, just like massive, looks like a giant.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you can view that at the Humboldt Museum in Winnemucca in the state of Nevada. And, legends of weird giants are common in almost every part of the world. And we won't go into that in this one because we have a whole episode about that.
And it's not on our YouTube because we recorded that before we had YouTube.
Yeah.
So you have to go back and check it out on Apple or Spotify.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth checking out. It's a great episode. It's probably one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing actually, some of the stuff that they found that is just not well known.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that takes us to the end of that section. But Helki has some really cool and interesting things as well to talk about.
Well, not really. Like, I ages ago watched a video that Trey came in on me watching, and it was sort of talking about mythical creatures that could possibly be, ideas of races of the past. So that video was by a channel called John Levi, and yeah, like the one thing that really caught my attention was the images of these chest people. They're like chest heads. So they'll be up on the screen and you can see that for anyone listening, it's like they don't have heads. Like it ends at the shoulders and then they have like a tuft of hair at where the head should be, and a face that's where the chest is. A big face, and they're really kind of cute
and
looking.
They're quite well known. They're called the Blemies, or the headless men of ancient and medieval mythology.
Yeah.
Should we read a bit about them?
You can, yeah, go for it. Trey did a little bit of research into them.
Well, I just quickly searched them up and got the first thing on ancient origins. But yeah, so these Blemies are an example of various species of bizarre creatures rumored in antiquity and later to inhabit remote parts of the world. And the most notable is strange men with a single large foot and the chest head people. They even had dog-headed humanoids.
Yeah, so I have some pictures of like the foot. It's like one leg, one foot, kind of like a mermaid, but they've not got a tail, or they've got a foot and a leg, just one. There's a giant ear, guys, like here they have those giant rabbit ears. I've got a copy of that picture as well.
Yeah, so it says that the Blemies were described 2,500 years ago in the histories written by the 5th century Greek historian Herodotus. And he described them as headless creatures with eyes in their chests. And
eyes and noses and mouths, it looks like.
Yeah. According to Herodotus, these creatures inhabit the western part of Libya, which is supposed to be very hilly and thickly wooded and teems with wildlife. In addition to these headless creatures, this part of the world is said to be the home of strange creatures as enormous snakes, donkeys with horns, and dog-headed creatures, all of which the historian tells his audience are not merely the stuff of fables. Herodotus, however, does not give these headless creatures of Libya a name.
Yeah, like if you think of, it feels weird, like they don't have a head, like where's their brain? But then what about all the science going into like the heart brain? And how, have you heard of all that stuff?
Yeah.
Like how the heart it does function as a brain.
And the gut brain too.
Yeah, and the gut brain. But like the heart, they've got evidence now to show that the heart literally functions like the brain. It has advantages to the brain as well. So like think these people could have just been like, maybe they were just like beautiful people that were very like heart driven.
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. Some people say it's like, oh, maybe their shoulders were like really high or something. That maybe they had shoulders that were like grown up to like be up here.
That's humans thinking that they had to have a head.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Because they're a totally different type of being.
Yeah, it could be a totally different type of being. And the Blemmies, the name was first attributed by a first century Greek geographer who describes the Blemmies not as strange monsters, but as a tribe inhabiting the lower parts of Nubia along the Nile towards the Red Sea. And it is in the work of the Roman writer Pliny the Elder that we see the Blemmies of Strabo equated with the headless creature of Herodotus. And the Blemmies are said to have no heads. Their mouths and eyes are being seated in their breasts. And it may be pointed out that, like Herodotus, Pliny's knowledge of the Blemmies is based on a form of heresy. That's what he said. But yeah, there's also a race of people with feet resembling thongs, upon which they move along by nature with a serpentine, crawling kind of gait. And you can see these guys like with weird and big feet and just one big foot in the leg. Yeah. So I mean, they're documented, and there's quite a lot of people in history like who wrote about them. Sir Walter Raleigh, who was a 16th, 17th century explorer, also provides an account of creatures, their eyes in their shoulders and their mouths in the middle of their breasts, and a long train of hair groweth backward between their shoulders. And he said that they lived in Guyana in South America, and although Raleigh had not seen and he called them the Ewaiponama himself, and he had not seen them, but he believed that they were real based on accounts that he deemed reliable. So at one point in time, people actually were kind of considering, are these people real or not?
Yeah, like they could be. Could be even like the one eye, the one leg, one dog head, cat head,
And there have been Cyclops skulls found, people with one head in the center.
One eye.
One eye, yeah, sorry. One eye in the center of their head.
Crazy. You didn't bring that up.
I think I brought it up in the giant, or in the Elven one or something. One of the episodes.
But it's definitely an interesting topic, and it's kind of it's not the same, but it's like in the same family. Next week, next episode, we will be in the same kind of family of this subject, right? So if you enjoyed this, definitely make sure to check out the next episode. Make sure you subscribe.
Next episode preview is going to be about a mysterious skull that was found. Was it human or was it not? The origins of that are unclear. And there is some crazy history surrounding Russian military, Nazi German occult groups. And
don't tell them too much.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I was going to say.
Okay.
And a secret briefcase.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sticking with us for this one, guys. I hope you found it interesting. Definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of the elongated skulls, the chest head people? Everything we've covered today, the Bigfoot. And I did just want to mention that I'm doing Vlogmas that's a video every day for December, so that kind of vlogs both of our lives. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out Vlogmas playlist on my channel, which is Helky Rain. But
and also I'm working on a comic book. And if any of you are interested in sci-fi, fantasy, or just cool mystical powers and exploring potentials of the cosmos and all sorts of things like that, then you can check out my Kickstarter for the comic book that I wrote and is currently in the process of being illustrated and funded for publication. and that is called the Riftwalker Saga.
Awesome.
So if you're interested in that, please go support the Kickstarter.
Cool. Thanks, guys, and subscribe, and we will see you next episode.
Woo!
Bye.